morning. Little vlog for a change. I just wanted to talk about my two benches and where I'm going with this. This is the first bench that I built. It has a plywood top, two 3/4 inch sheets of plywood, plus a 1/2 inch sheet of plywood on the underside, for a total of 2 inches of thickness. The frame is all salvaged lumber from construction sites. The posts are 4x4 cedar. The rails and stiles are all 2x4s, salvaged from a construction site. So that I've got a complete perimeter on the bottom and on the top. And then I have one of these on each end for lateral stability. It's, as you can see, it has a little bit of give in the lateral, but not a ton. The design of this bench is purely experimental, based on what I've seen of standard bench designs. So on this end, I've got the leg right out at the corner. And on this end, I've got the leg cantilevered in from the edge. The idea with that was I wanted to see what happened with this cantilevered part, because I felt from watching videos of people using cantilevered benches that having this cantilevered out meant that every time you beat on this end of the bench, that end of the bench flipped up disproportionately to what would happen if you had a leg right out at the end. So I want to check that. And I think you can see, if I hammer here around the leg or inside of the leg, there's a bit of vibration that translates through. But if I hammer out here, you can see that it's like 10 times the vibration that gets sent through the bench. And that's just because it's cantilevered out. I built this box frame here to try and dampen that wobbliness. I put some holes in this miniature 2x4 apron, just to experiment with holding things. Specifically, the hole positions on this were put in there for building doors. I had a bunch of doors to repair, 10 doors inside the house to repair, and so I needed somewhere to do that, and the side of this bench is perfect for that. I initially looked at building the top from plywood with the laminations on end, like many people have done. So I built a 12-inch wide laminated top and discovered very quickly that there were many, many flaws with that idea. The worst of which was when I drove a chisel into that top. First off, it went into the edges of the plywood laminations very easily. And secondly, there was a flaw in one of the factory laminations, and it split the entire thing down its entire length with just a single chisel. So I went with the flat plywood. Now, this bench has seen a lot of very heavy use. It's been used for everything that you would use for on a farm. It's been used for repairing motors, for repairing hydraulics, machinery, metalworking, all kinds of stuff, plus a lot of woodworking. Right now, I have this bench set up for 2 tasks. Task number 1 is to be building Kumiko frames for inclusion in other projects that I'm building. And task number 2 is to be cutting the blanks for turning and spoon carving. So this bench has remained in service. This bench over here is my second bench. It is built from purpose-bought lumber. All 6 legs, so I have legs on each end and one in the middle, are 4x4s, cedar. All of the wood is Douglas fir. The aprons are 2x12s. The tops are 2x12s. Both the apron and the top have a 1x12 laminated underneath of them, behind them, to give them a full thickness for the holdfasts. The bottom has a full perimeter 2x4 frame, half lapped into the bottom. Everything is held together with lag bolts because I wanted to be able to change the configuration of this bench if it needed it, if there was some major design flaw with this. And the same with the boards on the top. They're all held in with lag bolts. The pattern on the apron here is based on Nicholson's design, but I've experimented with the scale of it and stuff to make it more appropriate for the work that I'm doing now, which isn't doors. It's just little pieces of furniture and garden lanterns and decorative items and things like that. I wanted to try the split top because a lot of people spoke highly of the split top, but I really don't like the split top, and I would never build one with another split top. Also, the planks aren't as stable as the plywood. These planks have a tendency to slightly bow like this, and you can see from the end grain that would be the case, and that's exactly what's happening. They're slightly bowing like this, and this one is slightly cupping like this with the weather. When it gets quite moist outside, like 50% humidity or more, the top is extremely flat. When the outside humidity drops below that 20% or so, then this top tends to bow a bit, and this top tends to cup a little bit. Also, I find that this Douglas fir for the top isn't ideal because it tends to develop these little checks that have to be cleaned off. There's a bunch of them right here, one right here in particular, another one here, that had to be planed off. So I would either be much more selective about my top and get quarter sawn boards, or more likely, because it's much more readily available, is I would go with the plywood for my permanent bench top. And in fact, I am right now considering removing the planks and putting a plywood top on this existing bench to see just how stable that really is, and how strong and appropriate it is for energy return and other things. One thing that I've noticed with the planks is that there's a little bit of energy spraying throughout the whole thing, but with the plywood, not at all. You don't see this stuff move. So I think the plywood damps the energy vibrations much quicker than the planks do. So that's another reason that I'm considering going with the plywood top. I definitely really like the 6 legs. This bench is so solid. You can just work anywhere on this bench and you don't have to worry about any flexibility issues at all. This one I tend to work a lot in the middle of my benches, and then work towards the ends for cutting and specific tasks like that. But generally all the measuring and marking and mortising and that stuff, I generally do towards the middle of the bench. So this plywood top without the support in, admittedly it only has 4-inch aprons, is a bit bouncy for my like, but this one is as solid as a rock everywhere. I don't notice any difference really in energy return and dampening of the energy when you're mortising or other tasks like that anywhere on the bench. So I think that when I build my permanent bench, 6 legs is a definite must. I've gone with an 8-foot bench because everything on the farm is scaled up. You don't work on a little 4-inch garden gate very much. Mostly, you know, you need a gate that's wide enough for your tractor to get through and for its wagon and maybe for stock to move through. So 8 feet is a comfortable length of a bench on a farm. If I were doing a furniture shop, I would go for a 6-foot bench, I think. There's a lot of furniture that fits within that 6-foot range, and anything larger you can work on progressively if you need to, or brace it up with extensions, because it isn't going to be every piece. And 6 foot would give you a smaller shop footprint. So I think that about concludes where I'm at right now. As for the future, we'll have to see what happens. My first experiment is going to be to put a plywood top on the plank bench. Thank you.